Sims, let's go.
Hello everyone, it's your girl Miracle Sims and you are watching the GSL Talk Show. Tonight we're going to talk to a lady that we know and love. It's no other than Miss Shelly Carter, so stay tuned.
It's a miracle, baby. Shot chill. Miracle Sims, let's go. Yeah. It's a miracle.
That I'm not the type of girl that goes.
Yeah. It's a miracle, baby. Shot
Wishing I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. As you can see, we have here a lady that needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. Hello, Miss Shelly Carter. How are you?
Good. How are you, sweetie? Thank you for having me back.
I am good. I'm good. I'm glad to have you back as well, man. It is long overdue, this conversation. Look,
Yeah.
welcome to the GSL Talk Show. Like I say all the time, I mean, I know you're no stranger here and stuff, so it's always going to be a little strange to ask you the very first question that I usually ask, but by all means, tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Riverside, California. I am an only child, only grandchild, only great-grandchild. Yeah, pretty simple.
Wow. Okay. So Riverside, California. And so then, and say you're only child and only grandchild. Okay. So then, when it comes to just you and like in your endeavors and things of that nature, like what would you say? Like who is Shelly Carter? Like what was your goals, your dreams, your aspirations in those younger years growing up, things of that nature?
Probably one of the main things that I remember being about 8 or 9 years old. I knew that I wanted to adopt kids. I had a heart for kids. As I got older, I prayed a lot that God would send me the kids that were the most troubled or the hardest or the kids that nobody else could deal with. My parents got divorced when I was 12, and I had a lot of problem from that. I was raised in church, so we didn't believe in divorce and we didn't believe in any of that. When they got divorced, that kind of shook me a lot. And I had some problems in my teenage years. I lived with a foster family for a short time. So I understood how hard it was for kids. And I knew there were kids that were too much for people, that were too traumatized, that nobody would have the patience for. So that was my prayer, that God would use me in a way to minister and be a mentor or whatever to kids that were having a hard time.
Wow. So you said you lived with the foster family for a brief
I
moment?
did for about a year. When I was about 15, I lived with the foster family in Texas for a year.
So, I mean, do you mind sharing with us like kind of what happened? Because I mean, usually even
my mom and dad divorced. My mom was in the process of getting remarried because I was the only child, because I was the only grandchild and the only great grandchild. There was a huge custody battle and fight over me, and I had been a runaway for a short time. It was a lot of stress. So there was a family that I was raised with. It was the daughter of one of the pastors of the church, and she had been my Sunday school teacher when I was younger, and she had offered for me to come and stay out there. And I went out to school there for forget what grade it was. I think it was 10th or 11th grade. I stayed with them, and then when after that I came back and lived with some friends and finished out my high school.
Wow. So I mean, I guess the the tension between your mom and dad was, I mean, I get how it had, I guess, had an effect on you, um, to, I guess, want to leave or something along those lines. But why why weren't you able to like stay with one of them when you?
They were fighting over me for custody, and it was so intense that I didn't want to choose between my parents.
Mm,
Um, when we went to court, custody court, I remember in Riverside, it was this long hall, and there was a row of benches, and my mom was way down there, and my dad was way down there, and me walking in, now I have to choose who and where I'm going to sit. I'm going to sit with my mom, or I'm going to sit with my dad.
wow,
So I sat by myself. So,
wow.
um,
Oh man, that sounds very intense. Like it seems like it's still affecting you as well. Like, I mean, were y'all ever able to reconcile that or
oh yeah,
anything?
yeah, yeah. I just didn't live with them. I lived with foster parents. I lived with my grandparents. After that point, I didn't live with my mom and dad. It was just a lot choosing between a parent. So,
Yeah. Wow, that's deep. I mean, that's a thing all by itself. For sure. My Okay, and so then after, I'm assuming you graduated high school, things of that nature. So what was your pursuits from there?
um, when I graduated high school, I started working. I was immediately living on my own, and I just worked. I didn't go to college until later in life. I think I was in my 30s or late 30s before I started going back to college. I enjoyed school. I was good at school. I just didn't have the opportunity always from working and
Hmm. Oh, like kind of having to like fund it on your own, things of that nature.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Wow. So then from there, you're in school. What did you study?
I went to California Baptist College. I started out taking Christian studies. I got my bachelor's in Christian studies. At the time, I was a youth leader in the church. I have always worked with kids to some degree. My first job, I worked, the church that I went to, they had a preschool next door. So my first job was working as a preschool teacher. There were deaf kids that I taught in preschool. So I've kind of always just had a heart for kids.
Yeah. I mean, well, we know that. We know that. Okay. I mean, so I'm going down the timeline then. So we're up from childhood. I mean, obviously you're still communicating with your family, your parents,
Oh
and
yeah,
all.
yeah. We were. I was fine with my mom and my grandmother and my dad. We there was no problem there. I just didn't
Couldn't.
want to choose between my parents, so that was
Right.
my only solution. So,
Man, that's crazy. I mean, do you mind sharing, like, do you know like what the tension was between them?
um,
Like what caused the?
yeah, my mom had an affair, and so I didn't want to go with her. It was just, yeah, it was a big mess.
Mm.
So
Yeah, sometimes with, again, we can do things and not think about the consequences that it's going to have, not only on the spouse, but then also, the whole family and stuff. And
yeah,
so, wow,
no,
okay.
it's important. I think for parents, when you're making those choices to get divorced or to wreck your marriage, that affects your kids greatly. I
Mm,
don't know if it affected me more because I was the only child. There was nobody else to kind of carry some of that load or split the time, or I don't
mm,
know if that's the case. But I know
yeah,
it affects kids a lot. So
wow. Yeah, exactly. Man, I know that's a deep thing to even talk about because, again, like sometimes we just get, I hate to say selfish, but that's the only word in my
yeah,
head right now.
oh
We
yeah,
just
you're
think
right.
about ourselves and we just think about like, well, I want what I want and stuff. And I mean, I can't remember if I know I talked to Allie a little bit about, my own situation and stuff, but I think like what keeps me grounded and keeps me focused is, well, one, I guess the accountability that I have, but then
Yeah.
also just knowing like at the end of the day, like, okay, God has given me grace and mercy, so let me give my husband grace and mercy,
Yes.
and we've made this covenant, we made this agreement, all these different type of things. I mean, just there's something to know that, okay, my family is worth fighting for. Instead of just thinking only about me and my desire or whatever in those moments. But I know everybody, we don't think that deep sometimes. But
No, I agree. A lot of times, what I've noticed through the years is that people are processing their own childhood trauma, and they're working through their own childhood trauma, and a lot of times that kind of derails them from their marriage or their kids or their life. So it's good to address those things before you get into a relationship like that, because it will come up at some point. Um,
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, even just in this brief part of the conversation, and that just because I know you know what I'm saying. I know, and I can hear that you have strong faith, and so where would, I mean, obviously you said you was raised in a Christian home, things of that nature. Do you want to share your come to Jesus moment and like how you were able to maintain your faith in all these these difficult situations that we've discussed thus far?
um, my parents had me in church when I was just a few weeks old. We were in church every time the doors opened. I was raised Pentecostal.
Mm.
I was raised in the deaf community, the churches in the deaf community. Um, there's never not been a time that I haven't had strong faith in who God was. And I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but I've just always known that I've known. When you go outside and you look at the grass, you know the grass is green. You don't have to think about it. You just know it's green or brown wherever you're from. But you know what I mean? It's those things that you just know that don't have to be questioned every time you go outside. You don't have to reevaluate if the grass is green or not. You just know it is. I've always known that about God. When my parents got divorced, that kind of derailed me a little bit. But it didn't take me long to get back. I didn't take the route of blaming God. I didn't take those routes. It was, I just always have known.
Yeah.
I've kind of known what it was that God wanted me to do. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. So,
Man, well, I'm glad because all of those things can be things that again, it affects people different ways. So
yes,
sometimes people do blame God, and they and it makes their I guess they start to deconstruct, and that's what people are saying
yes.
these days and stuff, their faith. And so it sounds like you were able to maintain that. When it came to the running away, like what were you thinking at that particular time? I know I'm kind of going back a little bit, but
No, you're fine. It was just a lot of stress. It wasn't just that my parents were fighting over me. It wasn't just that they were getting divorced or it was a messy situation. My parents had been youth leaders when I was a kid. They were counseling people in the church about not getting divorced in marriage. So it shook the whole foundation of what I had always been raised to believe, on top of them getting divorced, on top of, you know what I mean? It went to its core. And I was always kind of an old soul. Um, I was just always an old soul. So it shook me to the core. It challenged everything that I ever believed. You know, I remember as a kid, I think I was in the fourth or fifth grade. I remember the first kid's parents that got divorced, and that was a huge deal. It was a kid in my class named Chris. His mom and dad were getting divorced, and it went through the whole school, through the whole classroom, because that didn't happen back then. So divorce was a big deal. Nowadays it's kind of a commonplace. It's the easy decision if things are too hard. But back then it wasn't like that. Divorce was a big deal, so it kind of shook everything.
Man, and then you still held onto your faith in that as well. So that's a blessing as well. But I well, right when you said it, I'm like, man, I guess we relate in some ways. Just because it can get difficult when you feel like there's hypocrisy happening. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Or if you feel
Yes.
like, you know, people aren't practicing what they preach, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I get that, and so I mean, that again, whole nother conversation. So I know you were saying from an early age you knew you wanted to, I guess, uh, you named be a foster parent. You knew that you wanted to work with kids and things of that nature. So you went to school. Um, you started working in your youth ministry, things like that. And so, I mean, I know people are gonna recognize your face on here. I mean, it goes without saying. They're probably like, oh, like they're probably very confused, like how we're able to talk about other things right now. But I mean, we do know you are a parent in these days and times. So I mean, it seems like God brought things to fruition. Um, but obviously, there's time and whatnot between the Miss Shelley that we know today, right? And where we just left off with college and things of that nature. So what I mean, obviously faith playing a big part, obviously love for children, things like that. Um, if you would like somebody to know anything about like you and your journey between those moments, to help them understand like who you are today, things like that, like what would that be?
Um, Probably that nothing in your life is ever wasted. Everything that I went through, from the divorce, from being an only child, from being raised in church and the hypocrisy, from everything that I went through, God was using each one of those things for now. There's
Mm,
nothing that I went through that I can't pull from for now. I went to, before I went to Cal Baptist, I went to vocational school and was going to school for nursing. Um, every little thing that I've gone through, hard times, good times, whatever, God uses for now. God won't waste any of those things that you've gone through, and I can see that so clearly. Uh, any situation that I've been through is beneficial for now. So
yeah.
probably that even though if you're going through a hard time right now, if you're going through something painful, yes, it's hard right now, and yes, you might not understand, but God will not let that go to waste.
Amen. I'm a living witness as well, definitely. I definitely have been there as well. So I I'm sure everybody's gonna want to know and stuff like that. But again, I just feel like there's still more information, right, to understand just about you. But so is that where you left off with when it comes to school? And I know it's not, but I mean, like I guess education wise, as well as like just I guess prepping us up for I guess the quote unquote main event of what everybody probably wanted to talk about, right? Like um I just like tell me, I guess, about the time before you met Allie. Like, what was, what was the Miss Shelley of that day and time doing up to dreams, aspirations, goals?
Um, I never after my parents divorced, I never had that desire to be married. I had seen so much negative in a lot of, not just my parents, but the grandparents. Everybody. It
Mhm.
was just something that I didn't look appealing to me. I was an old soul, and I saw all the conflict and all the drama, and that was just nothing that I wanted. I worked a lot. I went to school. A lot of times I worked 2 or 3 jobs. I volunteered to feed the homeless. We did a lot of that, going down into the river bottom to take food to the homeless people. Just volunteer work. There were a lot of kids that their parents couldn't care for them. I had one family. The mother couldn't take care of them, and it was about 3 weeks before Christmas. They had gone to my church, and she asked if we could take them because they were losing the house and there was nowhere for them to go. So they came to live with me. I had a roommate at the time, and they were with us for about 3 years before she was able to take them back. So I had a lot of situations like that, people that were just knocked off their feet financially or whatever. And because I had been active in the church and we had space, they asked if, we could take care of their kids, which was fine. And I thought, okay, that's what God wanted. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, taking care of troubled kids. I thought a couple of the kids were really rough, a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse history in the past. So I thought that was the extent of that until Allie came, and that was a whole different level of trauma and abuse. But again, God's preparing. And if you go through the Bible, you can see with Moses or whoever the same patterns. God, prepares you along the way for what it is you're supposed to do. So.
Oh, yes, man. I know you shared that journey with me when I was telling you about the things that I guess got me on this path and stuff. You're like, God was preparing you for today. And so, yeah, I totally get it. And, I've just been, this is probably like side note, random thing, but I've been kind of binge watching Chosen and whatnot and just looking at, all those different disciple characters and just, imagining the real people and just I don't know. It's just so fascinating to think about those biblical figures because, we have all this technology, we have all this access and, and things like that. And it feels like we're just so far away from or far removed from the relationship that they had with the Lord at those times where hearing his voice or just, obviously magnificent things are happening. But I don't know if we feel like there's not that type of stuff happening for us, but like you said earlier, it's similar patterns, similar things, communication wise, if you're listening, right? If you're open to, what the Lord is doing with you and for you and through you. So obviously you were being prepped and prepared,
There's so many situations in the last 5 years that I can look to the Bible and see somebody else walked a similar path. Somebody else walked a similar path. You know what I mean? I'm going through this right now, but somebody else has already passed this way. And that it's kind of reconnected me with the Bible. And not that I've been away from that, but it kind of resonates in a different way than I expected. It just is mind blowing. All the similarities that I can see with the things that are going on, even though it was, so far
in
the past, it just is amazing how God handles things. So,
Amen. It definitely is. So, so you kind of got thrusted into being a mom. It sounds like when it comes to people are just, I hate to say it like this one, I'll be joking with you all the time, but like I guess people just thrusting the children to your home. You became a mom,
And I did, and it was nothing that I was seeking. It was just there was a need, and somebody needed to step up, and there was nobody else to step up. If something needs to be done and nobody's doing it, I'm the one that's going to do it. It's got to get done. And that's just kind of my mentality. And there were a lot of times there were people that couldn't do it. I had a foster daughter, and she was on drugs, and she went to jail. So her babies got left for me and my roommate. It was just a lot of situations like that. Just there's nobody else. They had no other family, and nobody else was going to take them. Nobody else would step up. And it was just a lot of that. But.
Wow. Did you have a desire to be a mom?
I didn't ever want to have my own kids because I knew there was a need for kids that nobody would step up for. That was always my desire, would step up for the kids that nobody else wanted. When I was 18, right after I graduated, I went on a missions trip with a deaf couple. We went over to Indonesia. And they were starting a school for the deaf kids because that was back in 1985. If you are deaf in Indonesia as a child, they kick you out on the street. They believed it was a curse on your family. So there was a whole community of deaf children, little children, 2, 3, all the way up to teenagers that nobody knew how to communicate with. Nobody wanted them. So this pastor was taking them in, and they were starting a orphanage. A similar orphanage had been started in Korea, and so they were kind of mirroring that, where they would take the kids in, take care of them, and then teach them sign language so they could communicate. So I had gone with a deaf couple to go teach them, to teach the pastor sign language, to teach the kids sign language, because nobody could communicate with each other. So I was there for about 2 months doing that. So.
What would you say gave you that thought in mind? I mean, what do you just feel like it was the Lord kind of telling you to have that heart for foster children, or like was there something in your younger years that you witnessed? Like, what would you say that spark came from?
I guess just empathy, knowing that there was nobody else, that kids didn't have anybody else, that nobody else was going to step up, and nobody's usually beating down the door to take troubled kids that nobody wants. There's really nowhere for them to go. Like the kids in Indonesia, nobody was beating down the door to take care of those kids. They were throwing them out on the street. So again, somebody's got to do it.
Got you. So now I guess here we go. Drum roll, please. Oh, the question of the evening, right? So how did you meet Allie, or who we know to be Allie today, right?
So in my late 30s, I had the opportunity to go to college, back to Cal Baptist. I had started and I got my bachelor's in Christian studies. I wanted to continue. Like I said, I enjoyed school. I probably, if I had the opportunity, would have went all the way to get my doctorate. But after I finished my bachelor's, I think I skipped a year, and then I went back for my master's. Decided to do it in psychology. During that time, my dad's youngest sister started calling me, and she was always my favorite aunt. She was the black sheep of the family. All growing up, she was a mess. She was gay. She had a lot of trauma from my grandfather. But she was always my favorite aunt. She was always the fun aunt. She was always the black sheep of the family. Just, everybody kind of has that one person in their family. She tried to commit suicide. After that, I started, because I was an adult now, so I started, keeping in contact with her. Well, we started talking on the phone like 2 to 3 hours every night. And I started learning that she had DID, that from the trauma from my grandfather, that she had DID, that she had lots of alters. I don't know how many. I didn't know to ask. There's a lot of questions that I didn't know to ask then that I wish I would have now. But again, God used her and what she went through to prepare me for Allie. Had that not happened, I don't think Allie would still be here. I don't think she would. I would have been able to help her if I didn't already have that foundation and understanding. But my aunt was very gracious with me. She would let me ask her questions. Her alters would come up and talk to me. So I learned just over the phone to recognize their voices, to recognize the differences. I would ask them things like, when you come up, what do you see? Do you see Aunt Donna, or do you see something else? And, what's going on inside, and what does it look like on the inside for you? And so I was asking a lot of questions, and I got the best education that I could have. I built the foundation that I needed. When I graduated with my master's, we had to do volunteer hours somewhere, counseling center somewhere. Well, because I had been a runaway when I was younger, again, gosh, the only place that I chose, we were supposed to pick 2 or 3 places in case one was filled or one didn't work out. The only place that I wanted was the runaway shelter in Riverside. So it was full when I tried to go, so I had to wait a little bit longer, and they finally got me on the roster, so I was volunteering there when Allie came through. So I started advocating for her. Myself and another staff member had to take her to the hospital. I think it was in Moreno Valley. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was in Moreno Valley. We had to take her because she said she had been raped. So that was the very first instance of that. At this runaway shelter, when I would come in, the staff would tell me how horrible she was, that she was not following the rules. She was non-compliant. When I would talk to her, one of her 10-year-old daughters was up and was just spilling their guts, very kind. I could see her as you would see a very scared, troubled 10-year-old. So I'm seeing one thing. The staff is seeing something completely different. They're seeing this just belligerent, rebellious kid. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, 'cause that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this sweet 10-year-old kid. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I started advocating for her. The more I advocated, the more she started disclosing things. And the more I advocated, and the more she started disclosing, CPS stepped in. And that's something that's getting lost a lot in the slander, is that I took Allie from her mom or from her house. That wasn't the case. Allie was coming through the runaway shelters. She was going to the mental hospitals for suicide attempts. CPS stepped in and took her and removed her from the home. I didn't get Allie right away. She was in CPS care for a couple years. Then she went AWOL for a year. And then when she came off of AWOL, they agreed to let her be placed with me. So that's how that worked.
Got you. So okay, so you went from, not really necessarily desiring to be a mom, but having the children, being able to stay and things of that nature, going back to school, getting that, look, let's put it back on the screen, master's, psychology, because receipts are always good. And then, you're doing your volunteer hours, you come across this young lady, you hear about her before you meet her type thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're telling you, all this girl, da 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 da. You're meeting with her, and it's like totally different experience. So I guess at what point did you decide in regards to like adoption and things of that nature, or all of this is like way before that, or?
No, this is way before any of that.
Okay.
Because I was volunteering, I was a mandated reporter because of the situation I was in. So every time she's disclosing something, I'm having to write CPS reports. I probably wrote 20 or 30 CPS reports on this kid. She's, just this happened to me, so now I got to write a report. And this happened, now I got to write a report. So when
did things shift, I guess, and become personal with y'all? I mean, obviously it was personal enough for her to feel comfortable, but I'm saying like before you became like, what, this young lady needs me on another level.
Everything was normal, what I would say normal in the beginning, because, I was doing my job. I was writing reports, doing the protocol, and that was fine. After CPS took her, she was continuing to disclose to me that there were situations going on. So again, I'm still writing reports, and I'm still calling the social workers like, hey, did you know about this? They at one point got irritated with my presence because I was making more work for them and I was reporting things to them. So they had told Allie to not tell me anymore, not to contact me anymore, and things of that nature, which was fine, whatever. But at the same time, she's still telling me, look, this is going on, and this is going on, and this is going on. So I continued to report what was going on. They couldn't stop that. They told her, you're not allowed to call Shelly anymore. You're not allowed to have any contact. She would borrow phones. She would call me from all kind of numbers. Just, hey, I just wanted to talk to you. Hey, this, hey, that. So CPS did everything that they could. They threatened me. They at one point said I was a predator. They said, that I was grooming her. It was at that point that I started understanding that we were dealing with something else. There was a next level something, because nobody was trying to help this kid in the way that I expected CPS or social workers or anybody else to help. The things that she was telling me were horrific. And instead of advocating for her and doing what was in her best interest, they were attacking me and they were threatening her. So I knew we were dealing with something that was more, because up until this time, I always had a good rapport with social workers. I was always advocating for kids. You know what I mean? Something turned. I had no frame of reference to understand the depth of things at that time. I just knew something was really off. So
it's just very interesting. So when you're doing your job, and then it's like, oh wait, you know what I mean? It seemed to be a
yeah,
problem that you
no,
were
and it blindsided me because I'm like, thought we were on the same team here. We're supposed to be helping the kids, but it was next level. Like I had never seen anything like that in my life.
So I mean, okay, so obviously there was these strict threats to Allie, right? And then obviously in some ways, maybe not maybe as direct, I'm hearing, but maybe some type of threats for you as well. Like y'all aren't supposed to talk. Allie's still finding ways. And so I guess when did it get beyond like, okay, I can't. I mean, it seemed like, okay, you kept doing your job, right? And documenting the things and sending it in anyway. But like, when did it get to the point where it's like, you know what, we can't keep trying to go through them because they're not helping, or
It's in the CPS papers that I had a conversation. It's documented in there that I had a conversation with one of the social workers, and they were telling me when she calls, hang up on her. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. That's when I was in school, we spent 4 hours talking about DID, and they said it was very uncommon and it's not to be worried about because it's not a non-existent thing pretty much. But we spent hours and hours in classes and classes dealing with morals and ethics. Ethics is what you use to protect yourself legally. Ethics is not the same as morals. And at that point I came into a dilemma between my morals and my ethics, because those things weren't lining up. So it's either legally I obey what CPS says, or morally I obey what God says. And those were not the same things. So I said, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not turning my back. If she calls, I'm going to take the same action that I've been taking for the last, year or two. That's just what we're doing. She had continued to be moved from placement to placement to placement to placement. At one point, she was auctioned to Russia, and I didn't know so much about the trafficking. I just knew about the abuse in the foster homes at that time. So she was placed in this foster home, and the foster dad or the foster brothers were abusing her. That's a whole other topic about spiritual things where predators can sense kids that have been abused sexually, and they kind of are drawn to them. So that all was going on. And, 19 times she was moved in 19 different foster homes and 19 different schools in a year's time, because there kept being problems. So yeah, it was a mess. It got to the breaking point where she had told her social worker, look, my dating this boyfriend, he's a pimp, he's 27, he's taking me places I don't want to go. They said, well, just break up with him. They were placing her in a home that was near where he lived, and she's like, I don't feel comfortable here. And they said, well, just ignore him. They were doing very crazy things that didn't make sense. Around that time is when she was auctioned to Russia, and she chose to run. And she went into hiding for a year. She would call me periodically to check in. She was calling the social worker periodically saying, look, if you let me be placed with Shelly, then I'll come back in, And for a year's time, they said no. After that year, they said, fine, come back in. We will place you with Shelly. So I don't know if it was her age that changed. I don't know what it was. But a year prior, they're telling me that I'm a predator and she's not allowed to call and to hang up on her. And now they're placing her with me. So those are opposite things again. So yeah.
Hmm.
So
So no,
she
go
was
ahead.
placed with me. I think she was 16 or the end of 16 going into 17-ish when they placed her with me.
Gotcha. So you're officially like a foster parent at that particular time, or did you kind of work on to become one?
Officially, this was the first time I had gone through CPS to be a foster parent
Mhm.
because she was almost 17-ish around there. They called it a NEFRM, I forget what it stands for, but basically it stands for it's not a family member. It's a friend or a family that can take you.
Mhm.
I had to get fingerprinted. I had to have a background check and all those things. And as soon as I got those things, they placed her with me.
Got you. Okay. So you said she was 16, and I know you've kind of shared this before, but just for anybody that didn't, hear or understand. So I know you talked about being rough around the edges when she first came and all these different type of things. So now you were advocating for her at one point. Now she's living with you. How was that?
Um, she when she first came, it took a while. I think CPS had given up on helping her. They had exhausted all of their options. She was a chronic runaway. She was AWOL. She had all these issues. So when she first came, there was a short time frame where she was fine. Then she started just spiraling. Her MK Ultra was out of whack. I don't know how to explain that. She was rough around the edges in a way that I didn't think there was any help for her. She was so traumatized, I didn't think there was any help for her. She, to me, felt like she was past the point of no return spiritually. Had she stayed another few weeks, another month, wherever she was, I feel like she maybe would have sold her soul, maybe would have been past the point of no return, would have turned a corner. In the Bible, it talks about when your heart gets hardened. I think she was very close to that, like within months or weeks. Like it was at the last minute that they allowed her to be placed. So again, I think that was God. Um, at this point, I didn't know the depth of the trafficking. I just knew she was in a lot of bad foster homes, had been in an abusive home prior, was promiscuous, had DID, and that was about all I knew at that time. I didn't understand anything about MK Ultra, didn't understand the depth of DID. I knew a little bit what I'd learned from my aunt, and I was seeing switches in her, and that was about it at that time.
So was it just you and her in the home?
I had a foster daughter who was grown. We were living in an apartment, and she had a little girl at the time. We ended up moving a few times, but yeah, there was usually somebody else, like a foster kid, older, grown foster kids that kind of were having a hard time and didn't have a place to go, so they would come stay with me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what do you think made it difficult for, Allie, and like, I mean, okay, well, before we get into difficulties, like let's just talk about Allie's free. She's with you. Like, what was that first day like? Or was it like, do you remember that? Was it something
Um, things were good for a while. A lot of stress came off for a while, but then after she got familiar with how I do things and how the house is, and she, if somebody slammed the door too hard, she would flinch. If somebody dropped books, she's flinching. So her startle reflex was so extreme. a lot of things like that. She's having nightmares. When we would go to church, you know how on the back of the pews they have the hymnals and the Bibles.
Mhm.
When we would go to church, she couldn't sit back because the Bible was right there. Like just weird, odd things, because she could feel the Bible. You know, that she could sense
Yeah,
it.
the
Like
one in the back. Yeah, no, I get. Yeah, at first I was like, yeah,
she would
I was
kind of
thinking.
like
So the
she was
one that
being
was behind her would bother, and she wasn't able to sit back.
yes. If I hugged her, or you know, just kind of pat her on the shoulder, her skin would burn. It was a lot of weird things that I didn't think we would ever come out of. She was extremely promiscuous. She dressed like you would expect a trafficking victim to dress, very promiscuous.
Huh.
Again, with the church, I'm taking her to church. You know, I got this kid, she's got broken ribs, and I'm taking her to church, and I'm like looking for anybody to help, to stand with me, anything. And they're commenting on her clothes. Don't wear that. She had a pair of sweats that had, I don't know what was on the butt, juicy or whatever on the logo on the butt.
Yeah.
And they're like, she can't wear that here. And I'm like, yeah, wait a minute. You don't know what we're dealing with. And this is how you're coming at me. So we left the church. You know, I stopped taking her to church because it was becoming a problem, and I didn't want to traumatize her more.
Right. That is just so sad. Like,
yeah, that should have never been the case.
right. Like, you know, compel people to come, you know, come as you are, like, and then, you know, people, they'll learn, they'll grow, like things of that nature. But like, can we be the hands and feet of Christ, like at least at the church? Like, if
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And I don't think people understand that. And I think a lot of times I think it's a detriment for people who have been raised in church for so long. You get so accustomed to, this is my pew that I sit in, and this is, you know, this is how things are supposed to go, and don't rock the boat. If we don't get in the trenches with people, if we don't aren't willing to get dirty and get down on the ground with them and sit with them, we're not going to reach anybody.
That's it with them stuff out of me. Like, that's what Christ did. You know what I'm saying? He went, he had the meals, like he went and just like, and that's why, look, I know again, I talk about Chosen because I've been binge watching it lately or whatever, but you know, again, seeing him just sitting and talking to the people and, you know, and things like that. I mean, even though, yes, it's a theatrical interpretation, but that's what the Bible is telling us that he did, you know. And so are we his followers or not? Like, are we going to be Christ-like? Like, of course we're not perfect and none of us are going to be, but you know, but because of that, right, then we should show that grace and mercy to the next person, you know, what we receive, you know. So okay, so the people at the church, you know, turning up their nose at y'all trying to, you know, introduce her to the Lord, you know, make the correct way, because we know that she had some crazy introductions now. But so I know we can go on and on. So, but I know we got some other things to talk about too. So, when did it get, like, so I know you had the introduction to DID, so you kind of understood that was going on. When did you find out about all the rest of this stuff?
Around that time, we were having problems with the church, and she was not being able to sit against the pew. I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, now the church should be the resource. The church should be the hospital where I could take her for her trauma, and that's not it. I was calling counseling places. I was calling places I could take her for counseling, for those types of things. She was out of the scope of everybody's practice. They said, we don't treat that. We don't deal with that. I was calling 3 and 4 states over in any direction for help, and there was no help. It got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to have to figure this out myself, because there was no help. I've been getting dragged a lot about, well, she thinks she's Fritz Springmeier, which is somebody from years ago that wrote information about MK Ultra and the DID and all that. That was the only reference that I had of, okay, this is a thing. Didn't tell me what to do about it. it's figure it out, but at least it was acknowledging that, yeah, this is what you're seeing, because I didn't even know that at the time. Spiritually, God told me I can't preach at her because she's not going to hear it. I can't drag her to church because that's not working. I'm like, how am I going to show this kid that Jesus loves her? Like, how am I going to do that? I can't tell her, and I can't take her to church for somebody else to tell her. And it was basically a matter of being the example of Christ. Like, I had to be patient, and I had to be kind, and I had to be loving, and I had to do all those things, because that's the only tools that I had. And that was all that was needed, but that's all I had. So that was what I started approaching spiritually. For the psychology, there was nothing. I did find somebody at one point that understood DID. So that was a relief in itself, because that was few and far between. I took her to him a few times, but his approach was a hypnotic thing. He didn't understand MK Ultra. We were just on the beginning of touching onto the MK Ultra. So he is doing his treatment, which was a hypnotic thing for the DID. He put her in a trance, and that just sent the MK Ultra stuff spiraling. So now we had another problem, because she was kind of just in this trance for, I think we had gone on a Friday, and he kind of put her in a trance and was trying to do some type of treatment, and kind of pulled her out of that hypnotic state, sent us home. It's the weekend. She went right back into that trance, and I couldn't get her out. So I'm like, what the heck? You know what I mean? So there was literally not much help. It was figure it out. And that's what we did.
Wow. I mean, I know I told you I'm going to probably just always, I know I'm sorry. But I just, every time I just feel like when I get the opportunity to talk to y'all, I just always have to just say thank y'all. But like I told you when I first met you, man, like, thank God for you to be who you are in this lady's life. Like, because I don't think we have any clue like where she would be. I mean, well, probably she would probably be not here, like you said. And then it seems like you were the one adult in her life to, be advocating, to believe, to listen, and then to go through this journey of, trust, and again, being the hands and feet in Christ to her life, an example, right, of Christ to her life, to where she is today. Maybe she don't know it or not, and I told her this before too, but I'm like, she's spreading the gospel, you know what I'm saying, today, because of, the work that the Lord did through you. So thank God for you, Miss Shelly. Like honestly,
I honestly, I don't think I did anything special. My expectation is, if you had been where I was at the time, you would have done the same thing, because it's a kid, it's a human being. Like, how do you do anything else? That's not that I'm doing anything great. That's just the basic level of care for another human being. That, you know what I mean? I don't see it as, I'm, this great person and I'm this amazing mother. No, I was just doing what needed to be done, because what was being done was evil to this kid. So,
right.
My expectation is everybody would do the same.
You would think, right? You would think. Well, I mean, we're learning that's not all the way true, but I mean, you would hope and think, like, yeah, you see someone struggling in some capacity. Now, again, we know this is on a whole nother level and stuff, but I'm just saying, like, thank you for being willing to do what you are doing for her now, and then do what you did for her then, because obviously from what I'm hearing, and again, I wasn't there for nothing, you know what I mean? But from what I'm hearing, it doesn't seem like there was anybody else that was willing to go the extra mile and do what you did. Like, I guess, like they just said, walk the extra mile the way the Lord told us to do. Like, I know she tells about the lady that was in her childhood school that I guess ended up getting transferred or whatever case may be, because I guess she got too close or whatever. But outside of that, it seemed like there was no other adult person willing to step in and like truly show her love, like truly show her like Christ, like truly, any of the things. And so I just have to, let you know. I say thank you again. I mean, I'm sure she thanks you all the time and stuff. I mean, it means more, I guess, coming from her because it's her story. But just as somebody just from the outside looking in, like I just don't see anybody else in this testimony that has done what you've done. And yeah, we all here love her now or stuff, but that's only because you put in all this work for her to even be still alive and
It just,
and stuff. So
it just is what needed. You know what I mean? It's the very least that I could do. From the trauma that I saw and from all the hell that people were raining down on her, it was the very least that I could do. It's not. I just don't. I don't look at it as, oh, you did this great thing. It's the basic compassion and it's basic kindness.
Yeah, I mean, it is. You're right. But when you the only one that did it seemed like you're the only one that did that, in that particular time. You know what I mean? And so, and that's crazy to think, like, she didn't really have any examples of love. She didn't have no, I mean, but that's what she's saying in her testimony. That's what I've heard her say all these years. And so, I know that even recently, I work at the church I go to now and stuff, and the kids ministry and we did a workshop not long ago. I'm gonna say maybe like last year, and one of the things they said is like a child just need one adult to be that trustworthy person in order to like thrive and like what I mean, and not like spiral down and stuff. I mean, I don't know, we seen your master's in psychology, so you know all this already, but I guess I was doing like the first aid training of recognizing things, and that was one of the things that just has really stood out to me, especially when I share y'all's story here and stuff like that. I'm just like always reminding people, be the one, man, be the one. Like,
that's a great message. That's a great message.
So I'm trying. I'll be listening. I'll be trying. So okay, so the psychology wasn't really working per se, right? And then you trying to be the hands and feet of Christ without going too far, without preaching, and stuff like that, right? And so somehow from there we are now here, right? Now, obviously, you've learned a wealth of knowledge about MK Ultra. You shared with us recently, some things about that. I mean, obviously, you done shared over the years as well. Plenty of content for y'all to go peruse and let marinate on your heart and soul and mind about that. But I definitely know, like I was telling you guys, or telling the people last time, that I know you really feel strongly about this side of the conversation, MK Ultra, the mind control, the different types of programming and things like that. And so how did you I guess come to understand about like the rest of this stuff, like the stuff that we've been taking in over the past 5 years? Like, how are you able to like get this understanding about, okay, this elite trafficking, this Russia thing, this all this type of stuff that we are now taking in? Like
there were so many odd things. We don't touch on, like, okay, so we got the trafficking over here, then satanic ritual abuse, and then MK Ultra. So that all kind of goes together as one unit. So she started having really weird things happen. She could be standing and she would just drop like a sack of potatoes, hit the floor, hit her head, bang into whatever was around, whatever furniture was around. I can't tell you how many times she hit her head, and I'm like, what's going on? I got DID. I know a little bit about SRA. This is something else. There would be cars that would drive down the street and honk in a sequence, or sit across the street and honk. There would be weird phone calls. So all these weird things started happening, and it would kind of snap her into a different altar. It would drop her to the ground. There was just so many weird things going on. I was like, okay, we're dealing with something else. Like, I understand demons. I've seen demons before. I've prayed and cast demons out before. I'm familiar with that. I'm not familiar with this other stuff. I don't know what that is. So then I had there again, there's no help, because if you might be able now today to find help with DID, and people are a little bit more aware. And when I was in school, it was non-existent. Now it's a little bit, people are starting to acknowledge that. But if you're looking for help with MK Ultra, they're going to look at you like you got 3 heads, like that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I can't just go say, hey, she's got I think she's got MK Ultra because this, and that. That just wasn't a thing. So
Mm.
it was figure it out. She had an altar that came up one night. She was 13. So a lot of things for survivors happens like between 9 o'clock at night and 6 in the morning. So for the last, I don't know, 15, 16 years, I've been up all night every night, because when they do their rituals and when they do all that stuff, it's in the middle of the night. So though you might have some altars that function during the day, and then you got other altars that come up in the night to do rituals and things like that. So you can probably ask any survivor. Most of them are up all night long, just from that programming.
Mm.
So anyway, this new altar came up, and hi, do you know who I am? Who are you? How old are you? That kind of thing. So I started talking to her, and she goes to get a poster board and starts sketching out this schematic, blueprint looking thing of what she knows of the internal structure. So with DID, you kind of just split. Like if there's a trauma, like if the house catches on fire right now, and it scares me enough that my adrenaline's pumping and I think I might lose my life, that might be enough to make me split. So it's too much sensory input for me. Like there's a fire, I got to get out, I'm going to die. That's too much for me. So God made us, made our brains to split off. So this other part can now carry some of that stress load. Does that make sense?
Mm.
In the church, at least in the Pentecostal church, we teach everybody that this split off part is a demon and it needs to be cast out. Well, that's a lie that the church has taught. I don't think they know better. But first of all, you can't cast out part of the psyche, which when a split happens, that's part of the psyche. You can't cast that out. It's not a demon. It's part of the person. I think of it as a safety valve now.
Mm.
When she first came, I'm thinking, okay, these are demons, we got to deal with that. That's the demonic stuff. But no, and the church does a lot of damage to survivors because they think everything is demons, and they're not understanding the DID, and there's really not understanding the MK Ultra. So they try to cast out parts of the psyche, which does a lot of damage to survivors. But she drew out this schematic of what it looks like on the inside for her. So each of the altars knows a part of the blueprint, the internal blueprint. The kids have told me before that there is a place that has a huge, it takes 3 people to lift it off the wall, blueprint of her internal structure. Down to, they create a whole internal structure. So if I had to describe Allie's to you as best I can, it would probably look like a 60-story apartment building. On each floor, you have doors and apartments where altars are in each one of those rooms. But it's a whole internal structure. So each one of the altars knows part of the blueprint. So if you had all the altars come together, they could draw out the whole big thing that somebody has. When they do auctions and that type of stuff, they auction off the altars, and they will find, okay, I want to buy this altar in this quadrant, and they will put money down on that. When they do that, then those altars come up. So it's so in depth and disgusting at what's happened that was deliberately done. That's not just like there was a fire in the house and nobody could help it. The fire happened, and the stress of that caused me to split. This isn't that. MK Ultra and Monarch programming is inflicting the fire or inflicting the trauma on purpose because you want the split, and you're putting it in this blueprint where you want it so you can use it later, so you can traffic it later, so you can do whatever later. So they're kind of different things, but to do that to a child deliberately is the depth of evil we're talking about.
So I know we're going to probably get a little bit more into that, and maybe this will be a transition because this question, I feel like a lot of people, well, some these days may, like you said, know more about DID, and I think again we've been sharing, and I've been learning more from y'all and just the little research and stuff I've been doing about the whole MK Ultra thing. But I think a lot of times people may can relate to this, calling it not a not trying to look right from my mind, schizophrenia,
Uh-huh.
right? So do you feel like that's a good way to help people understand that, or you feel like no, that's totally different, that's something else? Like, how do you
I
feel about that?
I think schizophrenia is misdiagnosed a lot. I think they are diagnosing people with MK Ultra or DID
Okay.
under the as schizophrenic,
Mm-hmm.
because for DID or MK Ultra, there is no treatment, there is no medication you can take. It's roll up your sleeves and get in the trenches, and we're gonna be in for the long haul. Processing and getting the altars to work together, and there is no quick fix for what's been torn apart. There is no just smash it all back together. There is no give them some medication. There's none of that. It's roll up your sleeves and get in the trenches. We in for the long haul. Schizophrenia, they have expensive medications that they can give to treat schizophrenia, which have adverse reactions on DID and MK Ultra, which will trigger schizophrenia. So I think schizophrenia is extremely misdiagnosed. I think if you were to go for each person that's diagnosed with schizophrenia and reassess them, I think you're going to find a lot that have DID and MK Ultra. Schizophrenia tells you, like for Allie, if somebody tells you they're hearing voices, you automatically think schizophrenia. But Allie's got 200 altars and they communicate on the inside. So yes, she's hearing voices. That's not schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is when you hear the tree talking to you. So schizophrenia is on the outside of you, and but they misdiagnose a lot. If you're hearing voices, then they misdiagnose as schizophrenia. They're not accounting for DID or MK Ultra. Does that make sense?
Okay. I mean, I thought about at one point like trying to go for psychology or something like that, but then I think I don't know if I took a class in high school or something, and then they were kind of saying like you couldn't give advice. It was one of those like you only listen type things or something like that. And I was like, well, I'll give an advice. So I was like, maybe I don't need to go for that or whatever. But I've always been curious, I guess, about people, and maybe that, I mean, I guess helps with my acting side and stuff too.
The field of psychology and psychiatry is a very corrupt field. It's used a lot to keep MK Ultra people in check. If they come in, I'm having so much trouble and I need help, then they kind of reset their programming and they kind of run interference to make sure that they don't tell too much and they don't get out. The field of psychology is very corrupt. Sigmund Freud, Erik Erikson, all those were doing experiments on children and molestation of children, and it's just a very corrupt field. And those are the people that you know what I mean. If you go for counseling or you go to get your degree, those are the heroes of psychology, and they're the ones that were doing child experiments and molestation. So it is what it is. Had I not got the diploma, it wouldn't have put me on the path to cross with her. So, you know what I mean? It wasn't really so much about the diploma, but it was a means to an end, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess I never got that deep to learn about Freud and all that because, I remember taking either sociology and then psychology. I like I said, I did consider it because it seemed like, okay, getting to know people. Why? Because I'm always curious about like, why do we do this? Or why do we do that? Or why am I like this? And that type of thing. So I figured that it would help me to be able to understand that. But I never went deeper than high school. So I don't know if it'd been worth it to do it or not. But hey, I guess here we are. But I guess I do use those skills, I guess, when it comes to coaching, and then also when it comes to like acting and becoming other people in regards to performance, but I guess that's as deep as the Lord took me with it, I guess. But you're on a whole nother level, right? You're into, you're letting us know about the MK Ultra, you're letting us know about all these things. So I guess this might be a good way to segue into some of the questions and whatnot that, have been asked. And I know this first one that I think, you kind of brought it up a little bit when it comes to you say that people are, there's auctions and there's money being put down and things of that nature. So this was a question that popped up that you wanted to address. And this person is saying, next interview, please go in depth with who programs the codes and are selling the codes to the perps, please. And so, you feel like that's a good segue?
There we go. Good job. That's a really in-depth question. Allie's been trafficked at every level. She's been trafficked at low level, out of cars. How you would think of prostitution, trafficking out of cars for small jobs. She's been trafficked all the way up to the elite. So it costs money to pull codes for certain altars. So for instance, if you are someone that likes to have sex with 5-year-old little black kids, they can go to the blueprint and find the one in the quadrant on the blueprint and say, I want to put money on that, get the code in return. And then that person can come and find Allie, call those codes, and that little 5-year-old kid will come up that they have paid to molest or traffic. It's MK is like, it's a lot of things, but it's like almost like a smorgasbord of sexual perversions that they've programmed into the survivor. If you want to have sex with a teenage boy, even though Allie's a girl, there will be teenage boys on in her programming that they can call up, like infant babies, like, you know what I mean? So it's, if you think about it from the eyes of a trafficker, if you just have a prostitute that you're selling, and she's blonde with blue eyes, you can only sell her to whoever wants to buy a blonde with blue eyes. But if you have an MK Ultra survivor, you can pull up hundreds of different alters, infants, teenagers, any race, any nationality. You can pull those up out of there and traffic that way. So does that make sense? There's like, instead of just having one item that you can traffic, you have hundreds in an MK survivor.
But I guess I'm wondering, like, I guess based on that question too, well, do you all have any idea of like who did this to Allie, or you know what I mean? Like how did, because I guess like this program, I understand coding, right? And well, my husband probably understands it way more because he's a coder. I understand it has something to do with some codes and computers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I understand like I guess programming is along those same lines, and I understand what trafficking means and stuff. But I guess I don't understand personally what it means as a human being coded and you know what I mean, and a human being trafficked mentally and things of that nature. So I guess the question is like, well, who is doing that? And then maybe the next one, how, and maybe what, all the regular questions, who, what, why.
I still have a lot of those questions, and I don't have a lot of clear answers on that. It's my understanding that the grandfather was Navy, and from the history, Navy and Army played a heavy part in military programming of MK slaves. So there's that. What was the other question? The who, the why, and the how. From what I've seen, when a child is being split, so let's take that 3-month-old baby. We have the 3-month-old CPS report. I've seen that there's a 3-month-old altar, it identified by the distinct newborn cry that a newborn has. So if they're programming and they're splitting a 3-month-old altar, they will inflict trauma. So if you think of a 3-month-old baby being raped or molested, that's too much sensory, that's too much pain, that's too much of things that shouldn't be happening, too much evil. When that baby, like the house fire, can't take any more in their little brain, a part splits off. The MK Ultra programmers know how the split second that it splits, they can tell because they know what they're looking for. So they see as soon as that splits off, they grab that part of the psyche, which is essentially a clean slate. So if you think of it like a chalkboard, when the baby's here and it splits, now you have a blank chalkboard. They write a code on it. They determine what it's going to be. So maybe it's a Hispanic 3-month-old, or maybe it's a Chinese 3-month-old. They write a code and a script for it, and then they tuck it away in the psyche, and then they can call it up again by calling that code. So if somebody wants a Hispanic baby, then they can call that baby up for a buyer that wants a Hispanic kid. The kicker is when a buyer comes, they can see those altars. So when Allie is on live with you all, a lot of her enemies sit in the audience. They can see which altars are up. I don't know how. There's got to be some evil involved. But, you know, I know her, and I can tell. I know their mannerisms. I know the fluctuation in the voice. If somebody's drinking Coke, then I know, well, so-and-so doesn't like Coke, so it's not her. You know what I mean? I can deduct of who might be up. But sitting through a screen, they can tell who's up. So there's a lot. They program the survivors the way you program a computer. And that's a whole other story for another day. But they have technologies that will blow your mind. They use your psyche. They use your spirit. They use satanic rituals. They use a lot of things all combined together to get the result that they want. Allie, for instance, one of the questions that people were trying to drag me a little bit over was that I changed her name, and that's an altar, and yada, yada, yada. What people aren't understanding is that I don't think Allie has a core personality. With DID, so go back to the analogy of the fire in the house. I'm sitting here. You know me. I'm Shelly. That's my core personality. That's who I was raised to be by my parents. But a trauma comes, the fire in the house comes. It's too much stress on my brain, too much stress on my psyche. So I split. So now I have my core personality and I have a split. A lot of people, I think it was the one prior. Yeah, that one. So a lot of people think that you have your core personality and a split. With MK Ultra, they start splitting the kids in the womb. I don't have proof of this for Allie, that it happened, but I'm adding together the fact that she was already being split at 3 months old. There is a 3-month-old altar. In the entire time that Allie has been with me, I have never seen a core personality. So at what age does a child develop their personality? 3 or 4 months. So if she was already being split prior to that, they destroyed anything that could resemble a core personality, and everything that you and I deal with regarding Allie is all altars. I've not found a core personality in her system. They're all altars. So this says, let me go through this one. It says, Allie Carter is not her birth name. Yes, we've stated that repeatedly. Her birth name was Tori Tashina Outlaw. When I was about to adopt her, she decided she didn't want any ties to the Outlaw family. She didn't want the name. She wanted nothing to do with them, and she chose a new name. Her name was originally going to be Leilani Carter. Leilani means beautiful woman of God. That was her name. Leilani is 14. Leilani was the caretaker for the system. Right before the adoption, Allie came up, and Allie became the new caretaker. Leilani handed over her keys. That's a whole other story for another day. But internally, they have jobs that they're supposed to do. So Allie stepped in for Leilani as the caretaker. So we kept Leilani, and we added the name Allison. So her name is Allison Leilani Carter. It's because Leilani was initially the caretaker. In the middle, right when we were changing the name, Allie came up and became the caretaker. Allie is an altar. Leilani is an altar. You guys know Taya and Maddie, they're all altars. I've not found a core personality because with the MK, they crushed that out of her as an infant, probably in the womb. I can't prove that it was in the womb, but they start in the womb to see if the baby can hold the splits, the splitting of the mind. So they will do that by putting shocks on the mother's belly. They will do that by having the mother drink caustic or acidic or drink things that will irritate the baby on the inside. They do it by inflicting pain with poking with needles to see, again, like the fire analogy, to see if they can get that adrenaline and that stress state up to a certain amount. So the baby splits. They're already looking in the womb to see if the baby can hold a split. You have to have a higher IQ to be able to hold a split. If you can't hold a split of the personality, a lot of times people will go crazy or be in a vegetative state or different things like that. So it is my belief that they started trying to split Allie in the womb before she was even born. I have one of the survivors that I talked to. She was being raped. She was being born breech, and she was being raped as she was being birthed. So they're already starting to do those things to the kids. That's why I am so passionate. And so you guys have got to understand the evil that's being done to our children. That's on us. If we're not standing up and fighting for them and getting in the trenches and doing whatever we need, that's on us. We can't allow that to happen to our kids.
I'm as a mom, I'm right there with you. I'm doing everything I can to try to protect my son, and even still, obviously there's still things I know that I can't like shield him from the world and things of that nature. But like I think obviously there's a lot of reasons I resonate with y'all, but I mean, it's because of y'all that my son is in the homeschool situation that he's in right now. Like, just all those things that kind of put me more on guard to say, okay, let me be hands-on. Let me see what he's learning. Like, let me, make sure, because like, and I know that, yes, he had to spend time with the grandparents, and yes, we go to church and there's a bunch of kids there, and all this different type of stuff. And yes, there's still going to be some type of exposure or whatever at some point and stuff. But at least these things, like by the grace of God, I just, really rebuke from his life. I really would love, like, if he, just can stay as wholesome as possible, and stuff. And I'm not acting like he's just some perfect kid or something, but like, every now and then, I'm just trying to keep him as much on the straight and narrow as I can, because it's a lot going on in these days and times. And so, but yeah, so
A lot of people don't understand what our mission is really. They say, well, you're not jumping in the tunnels and saving kids. It doesn't work like that. Our hands are tied in a lot of areas of what we can do. But the one thing that we can do is I can tell you, hey, watch your kid. There's a problem. You don't know to protect your kid from a wolf outside the door. If somebody doesn't tell you there's a wolf outside the door, you know what I mean? You don't know how to take those precautions. And that's the best thing that I can do, because it sound the alarm. I can tell you all day what Oprah did to Allie, but your son's probably not going to cross paths with her, but he will cross paths with the neighbor or somebody at church, and that's where the predators are just as much as the elite. So
yeah, I mean, and that's one thing we're always sharing and saying here, I guess on y'all's behalf and stuff, because I'm like, we keep having these conversations and questions, and obviously some of these comments and things like that, and it's like, okay, y'all are missing the big picture. At the end of the day, like, let's say none of this stuff that Miss Shelly told us tonight ain't true, fine, but guess what? Children are being abused and people are going missing. So all I'm saying is, hearing Allie's testimony gave me a better insight of what's happening to the missing people, because I keep seeing them. I've been posting a lot more lately. And then lately, I mean, one of my last posts that I posted, another like missing lady, I was like, respectfully, we can stop debating about Ali at this point. Like, people are missing right now. Like, I mean, like the fact that I done posted like handfuls of people that are missing right now, men, women, and children. I mean, my goodness, like, can we get behind that? Like, can we figure out what's happening with this? Because
Right.
God forbid they're going through the things that Ali testimony, said that she went through. So, so anyway,
And morally, I can't just sit back and not say anything from the things that I've gone through with Ali and the things that I've seen and witnessed myself. I can't morally just sit back and stay quiet when I know you have a kid, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so has a kid, and this person over here has a kid. Like, I can't keep that secret. I didn't know if Ali would ever get to the point where she would speak. Just how traumatic things were and how traumatized she was. I didn't know. I honestly didn't think she would ever get to the point where she would speak the way she is now. I started years ago. We've been speaking publicly for 5 years, but prior to that, I was posting on Facebook, like, look, stuff's going on. And because that was the only other thing I could do until she was ready to speak. But I can't be quiet if I see your kid heading for trouble or, danger. Like, I can't be quiet about that because I don't want your kid to go through what she went through.
Exactly. And so
that's it. That's all.
Exactly. Well, thank God for y'all, and thank God that she got, I guess the boldness to go ahead and speak. So I am curious. I mean, I know you probably like, girl, listen, it's been hours, so you can let me know when you're like, actually, I'm ready to wrap it up. But I did wonder, like, so now that you know that there was these altars and you're saying that there was no, main, I guess, I can't remember the exact way you said it, so my apologies. But I like core personality. Core personality. So who do you think was talking to you when y'all met? Like, or was it different people talking to you?
Different. Taya's 12. There was a 10-year-old that was coming up. They were switching a lot. I don't know if everybody's MK Ultra and DID work like Ali's, but she can switch in the middle of a conversation. Unless you know what you're seeing, you wouldn't recognize it. But yeah, I was dealing with a lot of different altars.
Okay. I was just wondering. I mean, I guess, like, looking back, were you able to, like, kind of pinpoint, like, oh, so got it, I mean, do you want to address these other questions, or are you kind of, how you feel?
We can. Yeah, if you want to throw them up, I'll try to go real quick.
Okay. So, well, here was one. Well, they're saying that she's talking about herself, and then they're saying, I guess, she doesn't look like she would be in the same circles with their.
Okay, let me get on the first part. Ali Carter, Ali can only tell you what she's experienced, and that's why she's talking about her experiences, because she can't speak on anything else. So that's a fair statement. It says 39% of other people's stories, like Britney or whatever. The reason Ali would reference Britney Spears is because you guys are also seeing Britney with videos that are very erratic. So when she's referencing other people like Britney, it's to show you the patterns. This is what's going on, and this is what you're seeing. And you're seeing that because Ali goes through the same thing. When Britney's dancing erratically on those videos, you're seeing different altars. So there's a reason, and there's a means and a reason why she's doing that. And then the other percent, the children, our whole message has been for the children. It is not about raising money. It is not about sitting on this camera. I can't stand sitting in front of the camera, but I love your kid and I care about you and your kid enough to do the things that are uncomfortable for me, because I don't want your kid to be having nightmares and having altars and having all these things that Ali has. So Ali's not, I guess what you're saying is not pretty enough to be a millionaire's arm candy. Again, you're not managing your expectations and perceptions. It's not about that. If somebody is a millionaire and Ali was trafficked to the elite, they are not buying Ali per se, but they are buying the little kid alters or the 12-year-old alter, or they're buying something else than what you're seeing. The other explanation for arm candy is Allie was used often to carry suitcases of cash, drugs, weapons, and they will hire people as arm candy to do that, because if that person gets caught with the suitcase of drugs or weapons, they're not in trouble. Allie's expendable. So your thinking is this: you have to step back again and look at the bigger picture of what's what.
And I mean, I think most of us are telling our testimonies, right? And most of us use other references to help people understand what we're talking about. Like, I mean, it's just very interesting how people have all these critiques and coaching and all this type of stuff that they want to do. Other than, you know, I don't know, help stand for children, I guess. Okay, here's the next one, Miss Shelly. Oh, is that the same one? Wait, my bad. What about this one? Okay.
Not alleging one incident by one person. She claims to have decades of proof. Okay, let's talk about the proof situation. What constitutes proof of a survivor being trafficked, raped, tortured, MK'd? What constitutes proof for you? First of all, we've released a lot of things. We've released CPS papers. We've released a lot of things. As far as proofs, are you looking for a porn video? What exactly are you looking for that would convince you? Second of all, some of those proofs are tattoos, birthmarks. Some people have hermaphrodite, which means they have both genitals, a vagina and a penis. Would that be enough proof? If Allie tells you that she was trafficked to somebody that is a hermaphrodite, you're not able to prove that. She can say it to you, but unless you're going to go find that person and pull their pants down, you're not able to prove that. So what exactly are you looking for? And are you in a position of power to do something about it? No. So I don't know what you want.
Right. Let's see. Here's the next one there.
Be suspicious and question everything except us. Again, we've said repeatedly to question us. We are not above being questioned. I will answer. If you want to get my email information or tag in off of Allie's Army and get a message to our admin, I will take all the time in the world to answer any question that you have. Because I know and I understand that you need to understand to protect your kids. So I will be so patient, and we've always been open to answering any questions. The last one, when I say people don't understand, if you, let me say, first of all, I apologize if anything that I'm saying or doing comes across as condescending, sarcastic, that I think I'm smarter than you. I don't at all. When I'm saying you don't understand, I'm saying that with grief in my heart, that you don't understand the depth of evil that's being done. That's not a slight on that I'm calling you stupid. It's none of those things. I've seen things that you can't fathom that happened to this kid, and I'm trying to tell you in any way that I can so it doesn't happen to your kid or your nieces or nephews. But again, if you think that I'm coming across condescending, I apologize for that, because that is never my intent.
Well, Miss Shelley, I think you have given us obviously years of a well of knowledge, but definitely tonight here on GSL, I really do appreciate you and your time. I mean, I know it's been hours, man, but at the same time, I don't know. I just really do enjoy talking to you all and just being on this level with y'all. I'm blessed that, you know, I don't know. I know everybody, you know what I'm saying? Everybody ain't able, but so I'm blessed, man, to be able to have this conversation with you today. And I mean, if there's anything else you would love for us to know, feel free to let us know right now. And then if you want people to reach out or have anything for us to look out for, just feel free at this time to share whatever you would like to say.
I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for opening up your platform all the times that you have. I don't think people appreciate the courage that takes to stand in the position that you are, to open your platform and to be open to hearing. That's huge. we couldn't spread the message as far if you weren't willing and courageous enough to do that. So I just want you to know we love and appreciate you, and thank you so much.
I love you all too. You know that. And I mean, well, she didn't say it for herself, but I'll say that you guys, like she told you guys, if you want to email her, you know what I'm saying? Anything, there's plenty of information at allysarmy.com. You can email her there, email Allie there. I know they'll answer your questions because I done came here and read them for you. Okay, so you know they will take the time and talk to you and answer your questions. But Miss Shelly, thank you so much for visiting us here on
Thank
the
you,
GSL
sweetie.
Talk Show.
Appreciate you.
Wishing I would have a one night affair.
Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you so much to Miss Shelly Carter for joining us tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and go to allysarmy.com for more information. Have a good night.